Hello, I'm Sarah Crompton, and I'm happy to welcome you to this week's instalment of the WhatsOnStage podcast, which is a special edition about the Lehman Trilogy, the amazing play that is on at the Gillian Lynn Theatre. And I am here to talk about it and to talk about what it means and what it's like to do a play that lasts 3 hours with 3 men playing 70-odd characters and spreading over 164 years with the 3 stars, John Heffernan, Krohn and Howard Overshown. I'm going to start by asking you all how you first came across the play, which is an epic and first seen in 2018, and you're in the latest incarnation of it. John, when did you first encounter it? Can you remember?
Well, I'm a bit of a self-confessed theatre anorak, so I saw it in preview at the National about 5 or 6 shows in, and I didn't know what to expect. I assumed, being called the Lehman Trilogy, it was going to be about the fall of the bank, and so I was really surprised that it took this huge sweep of 160 years, and I was knocked sideways by it. And I'd worked with Simon before, and so I met him afterwards and chatted to him a bit about it, and then it all happened rather quickly for me in unusual circumstances this year, because these guys were in the midst of an international tour, and Adrian Schiller was playing Henry, and he very sadly passed away after the Sydney run. So I came in at quite a lick.
So you've been doing it on the last leg of the tour since San Francisco.
Yeah, so we took it to San Francisco in May, June, and then we've had a bit of a break over the summer, and then here.
Aaron, how did you encounter the play?
Funnily enough, like John, I'd worked with Simon before, and I'd worked with Sam before.
This is Sam Mendes.
And they were at the Armory in New York, and I'd heard that Sam perhaps thought this was his masterpiece. I had coffee with Simon. I knew nothing. I wrote Sam when we were here in 2019 when it was the Piccadilly. In lieu of social encounter, he sent us tickets to his play, which, like John, it knocked my socks off, as they say. Just stunned. Yeah, because there's, as I don't think I ruin much to say, the lights come up and you're in 2008 in an office, and the next thing you know, you're in 1844 at the docks in New York, and it's quite a ride.
Yeah, it is an amazing thing. And it is interesting because it opened at the National in 2018, and so it must have changed a bit over the time that it's been on, but it remains always relevant, I feel. Howard, how did you encounter the play?
I actually, I also worked with Sam Mendes in 2011 at the Old Vic in a production of Richard III. So I had a relationship with Sam, and my wife is actually very good friends with Carol Newling, the producer. So when Carol was coming to New York, she said, you should come see the latest show. So I also saw the Armory. I saw your socks there, by the way. But I saw the show. I had never seen Simon Russell Beale perform on stage and didn't really know what I was about to see. And the first 15 minutes of Simon on stage by himself was some of the greatest theater I'd ever seen in my life. It was just the simplicity of it, of the storytelling, and how he commanded the stage, and then it unravels and the next brother arrives, and I just was blown. I mean, it was incredible, and so said to myself, I'd love to do this someday. And then years later, Adrian Lester became part of the cast, and I auditioned to be his cover,
right,
and understudied in New York, and when it moved to Los Angeles, I took over the role of Emmanuel and have been in ever since.
So we probably should do some explaining. So for people who haven't seen it, I wrote about it between its coming on at the National Theatre and then its first transfer to America. I interviewed Simon Russell Beale, Ben Miles, and Adam Godley, who were the original and who had worked on it over a long period in workshops, because it started its life as a play of 5 hours running time, apparently, and with multiple characters. And Simon made this joke that he demanded that they changed it because he realised that he was written out on page 15 and that he wouldn't have a big enough part, which was something that Sam said wasn't entirely true, but it did start that idea of it being 3 actors playing the 3 initial Lehman brothers, and they're described as the head, the arm, and the potato in between. And from that starting point, those 3 brothers become everything else. I wondered for you, John, taking on roles played by Simon, how much it you have freedom within that, and how much these echoes of the originators are always in your head?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've never taken over in something before, and it was very particular circumstances in which I took over, and it was such a short period of time that, to be honest, I think probably that helped me. If I'd had longer, I think I would have had a similar voice to what Howard was describing, how fabulous he was. I saw it and I know he was. And then in the end you have to think, well, yes, I know he was fabulous, but I can only be, I can only bring myself to it, and I can only bring how this play works is that every actor brings their own characteristics and their own particular tastes, I suppose. And so I think if I'd had a longer rehearsal period, I would have fretted over that. But because it was all foot to the floor with literally learning the lines, learning the moves, I had to sort of just work on instinct, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But it was great to have that knowledge of the show in my head from seeing it. And it's testament to the show that the fact that it was 5 or 6 years ago and I still remembered so clearly visual. I mean, I was given a link to the video, so I didn't have to rely on it too much, but so much of it did spring to mind.
Yeah. And Howard, I have seen it. I mean, I have seen it multiple times. I've seen it with different actors. And what always strikes me is how much scope there is within it for an actor. I mean, because you are playing so many characters. You're going through the Lehman brothers family. I mean, it's a family saga that goes down the years, so you play multiple things. How did you find it coming into it and adapting to the many parts? Well,
like John, I think we're all similar in this, but being the understudy, I had very little time to catch up. So I had 2 sets of videos. And because I was understudying Adrian Lester, my job was more or less to do the best version of Adrian Lester that I could do, so that it didn't throw off the other two actors. But I also got to see Ben Miles. So Adrian was amazing, Ben was amazing, and they both are completely different Emmanuels. And I think my Emmanuel is completely different than those two. But that's the nature of this piece. I think every time it's done again, the piece is handed off, and it gives the director a chance to sharpen things and maybe tighten things here and there. So,
and it's got an extraordinary sense of play, because your character plays a lot of children and ends up playing different children.
The guy with the deepest voice is playing the children.
Exactly. And you kind of think, and that has always been the case. And so you have this surprise of the big, tough Emmanuel becoming all the little children as well as the play unfolds. I mean, does it give you a sense of, as actors, of being able to play within it? I mean, Aaron, have you found that?
Yes. It took me, as Howard says, the job was to be Adam, and not only do I think that is the job, but that was made pretty clear that, we were a lot of detail about make sure you do this and that, and you thought you had it, and nope, you're missing this little tiny thing. It took me a while to get his voice out of my head, mostly just because he was so good, and also because it was the version I knew that I'd seen so many times. And I don't remember when it happened. We rehearsed the beginning of the year. I think by the time we were in Sydney, I wasn't thinking about it, but more in San Francisco, I thought, oh, okay, I no longer hear Adam for the most part when I do it. And now that seems to be gone. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I think that's good, because Adam is foundational to it. And there are things I do that he built, period. But I no longer feel like I'm hitting a thing. I'm sort of able to live in it.
I mean, I suppose from the outside, one of the things people do want to know is how you learn it, because it's unusually complex, presumably to learn, because it's very long, it's 3 hours, and it's multiple characters, multiple accents, you're playing plantation owners and businessmen and wives and daughters and rabbis. I mean, there's a huge range of parts that you're playing. Does it require particular tricks of learning, or is it just the same? I always wonder if there's ever a moment where you suddenly think, where am I in this?
There is a bit of that, but I do think, I mean, obviously there's the sheer quantity of it, that it's such a huge long show, and but there is a lot of repetition, and there is a logic to it. Yeah. And I've worked on other plays where I personally found it a lot harder, like being in Harold Pinter plays, where again there's lots of repetitions, but it goes off on sort of quite strange secateurs, and you think, how on earth do you end up there? Whereas this, it has a beguiling, childlike nursery rhyme quality to it, which is, I don't know, there's something which is lodged in our brains, I think, in terms of how our brains work, which makes it easier. I mean, it's not, I didn't find it straightforward, and I had to do it, as I said, like unbelievably quickly, and I'm still flailing about. But it's not as impossible, I don't think, as perhaps it might.
Yeah, if you're doing Long Day's Journey tonight, you're stuck in that house's set, and you could get, I mean, again, but I think the way I think of what John is saying is it's full of mnemonic devices. If you're not super sure where you're going, often the thing is rotating and the light's coming up, and just that is a funny little cue to be like, oh right, this is where we go into
this section,
this part, you know what I mean, and each other, and little simple props and boxes, and I find it more sort of the sense of like they push you in a box and it's like, and you're locked into the box. If you start thinking about that, it can get intimidating because there's no escape. You're going for 55 minutes for 3 acts. That's not the exact number of minutes. That can be intimidating. Worrying about not what's coming next. But as far as what's coming next, yes, I find that there's more little clues and tips and things that kind of lead you to the next thing.
Plus, it's also not just with the words, with blocking, it's choreographed and it is linked together from the beginning to end. So there's always another dot. There's always something like, so it leads you, I think.
Right.
It's like, I feel like, I always say, it's like, I've never jumped out of an airplane, but I feel like it's jumping out. You start and then it's like the act's done.
Yeah.
It's like, what just happened?
Yeah.
For us, I feel, well, I'll speak for myself, but we've talked about this before, but like, it doesn't feel long, I think, when you're watching it and when you're doing it, because the acts move. They move and you just become part of it, and the audience comes along for the ride, and it's like, one thing after boom, 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 and then...
And also, we're so closely bound up with one another, and maybe I'm wrong in thinking this, but so much of it is narration. You think, if I completely screwed up, then one of these guys will say, Henry paused. Henry was thinking for a long time. You feel as though you'd hopefully have each other's backs like
That's
that.
one of our favorite pieces of shtick, is that you could at one point, whatever you say, the other person has to do. Henry sucks his thumb. John says to stick his thumb in his mouth.
Yeah, because in the writing, I mean, Ben Power adapting Stefano Massini's original, you have got that interesting mixture of narration and dialogue, and also so both full of ideas about, essentially it is a play about the rise of capitalism and the change of capitalism. And when you say that, it always sounds so dry, and yet it isn't dry at all. It does whiz by, and you also feel it's one of those plays that makes you feel clever, that you feel that you've absolutely grasped the whole of Western capitalism from its origins in the 19th century to its current incarnation, and then it ends and you forget a lot of it. But that balance of it doing it, that must be hugely enjoyable, that sense of you're taking people on lots of different journeys within it, and it's got that family saga as well as the capitalist side of it. Was that one of the things when you originally looked at it, Howard, that you felt this is why it's appealing to you to do?
I think part of what was appealing was just the challenge of doing it as an artist, of something where you get to use a bit of everything that you have. But it is about capitalism, but to me, the part of the play that really resonates with me is the family. It's about family and traditions. And so what's interesting is that for me, Howard playing Emmanuel, especially in Act 1, and there's a strong through line for me and my feelings about my brother Henry, and about our relationship and my relationship with my younger brother. And I too was like John, started doing the play so quickly that I was a bit of a puppet, just trying to get through it, saying words. I didn't have the time to like do my work and why is this? But now that I've been in the show a while and I just love working with these two men, it's become clear. So to me, it's about the relationships. It's about brothers. It's about trying not to pass on the sins of the father to the son. And, so it's about, and I think that's something that everyone can relate to in some way. And so that the financial part of it is just secondary to me. Maybe it's more about the relationships of all these people, the generation after generation after generation.
Yeah. I've been interested in watching it repeatedly. For me, I absolutely agree that the family saga is so interesting, and the way that the family saga develops and that the rituals change and the relationships change. But I was always struck by how powerful a description of capitalism it is as well. I mean, it does have that sense of really making you understand how it originally started being about goods and community, and it ends up being about money itself.
And I don't think it pulls its punches in the third act. Sorry, you were about to say something. But in terms of its attitude towards capitalism, I don't think it becomes a tract or anything like that. It doesn't force anything down the audience's throat. But I think by the time it comes to the third act and money becomes something insubstantial and they're just building this terrifying house of cards, which is completely unsustainable, I think there's a rapaciousness to the whole system, which I think the play is quite direct about. And in terms of this, where we are in America now, I think that's quite telling.
Yeah, and it literally accelerates on the stage because you feel that because it's set within Es Devlin's box, that it's moving faster and faster. Yeah. And I was struck by there are a lot of dances in it as well. That you do the twist as Bobby, don't you? Bobby being the man who becomes more and more obsessed. And there's an amazing long scene where he literally dances almost to death, in fact, as he goes. Is that physically quite exhausting? I'm always struck by that scene. How do you prepare for it?
Well, I always, as we get going each night, I think, Henry and Emmanuel and Meyer show up, and they're very sweet in their ways and interesting and smart, and there's conflict. And I see people, and on a night especially where they're not as reactive, I think, oh, wait till you get a load of Philip and Ruth and Herbert and Glucksman and Bobby, etc. Because, by the time we get there, I mean, if they think back to the tiny shop in Montgomery, to Dances of Death and Philip screaming and Glucksman, growling, it's quite something. I mean, I love that part. I not a lot of prep. I mean, there's a technical challenge to blabbing and trying to hear the rhythm of the music as I disintegrate into 140 years old. But it's always fun to do because I always feel like, as crazy as it's gotten, I keep thinking, where do they see where we're about to go here?
Yeah. And that's the other thing about the play, of course, is that the fourth character all the time is the live pianist playing. How much do you have to be conscious of her all the time and interact with her?
There are many times where our movements are dictated by, or paced by the piano, by the music, or certain accents in the music we have to hit or wait for certain things. And so it can be a bit tricky. I actually have one in the third act where I don't even know where it lands, but I'm saying something, but I can't start the next line until I hear dong, and it falls wherever the music falls. So I'm not always in complete sync with the music, so it's just that, but I'm aware of that. It's an awareness, and it's actually wonderful in a way because the music's there for you as well, so it's there to support you and to help propel you through certain parts of the sections of the show.
But it makes it unusually choreographed. And how hard is it getting round the set, the blocking? I think because I was thinking about doing this when I was in last night, I was thinking about how I was conscious that you have to think where you're moving because the set's going round and round and you're moving as well. I mean, is it complicated? Are there ever any kind of disasters that strike as you find you're at the wrong desk or...
Well, there's a few people in tech walk into the glass.
I was going to say we're not joking. That is something that's happened very often. People will walk.
Most people have walked into
glass. I have not yet.
So it's a help when you actually write on it so that you can see there being something.
Yeah.
I would say for me, I do think that, and actually I think I teased Aaron about this, but when you were doing Bobby with the Picasso and that section, when the way he works the revolve, because for me at first it's awkward because you have to, it's moving this way, but you want it to look natural. And then I think we were doing the show so long, there's a section of the play where I was watching Aaron talk and work with the revolve, and I was like, and I wanted to call him Fred Astaire. He looked very, that was my new nickname for you. That was like 3 nights ago. Yes. So look at that guy move.
Is it physically exhausting? Simon Rosseville, again, when I first interviewed him, said it was a bit like doing a workout every night, that he found his knees had gone. Is it, John, physically tiring, do you think, or not more so than anything else?
Physically, I'd say it is. You've got to be... You definitely need to be focused the whole time. That sounds like such a trite thing to say, but there are times where you think... The one moment you can be sure, I've got a tiny bit of a break now, that's where you're going to screw up, without a doubt. Yeah, it is. I'd say it's quite physically tiring. I wouldn't say it's emotional. There's more about me than probably than the part of the play. But I wouldn't say it's emotionally that like
but physically,
because you've just got to you've got to go to tread quite lightly with all of those characters. You know, you can't you can't get too angsty. Yeah, physically. How do you guys find it?
I think it's not aerobic, but it's constant. And because, as John was saying, the focus is constant, I think that eats calories too.
Yeah.
That same for me. It's physically weird. Like there's we're walking up and down boxes. Sometimes those boxes move. You can tweak your back and things like that. There's things like that all the time, and that can happen in other shows. But for me, it's also the precision. It's the mental. And it's funny. One of the things that is hard to, and we've all talked about this. Everyone is what do you eat?
Yeah.
Because between acts,
you have to feed the machine because it's.
So what do you eat?
No, a lot of bananas.
Lobster.
Yes, fondue. No, but it's a lot of bananas and like protein bars, and I should have bought stock in Pret the first 4 weeks. I just bought a couple sandwiches and would eat a half a sandwich or a quarter of a sandwich. Just a little bit, but just enough. You don't want to eat too much,
right?
Because you have to move and be light on your feet and everything. But it's silly. But it's more for the mental precision, because when you're not speaking, there's something else that you're doing or you're focused on or you're supporting. So it's.
I should say though that I'm very grateful to Simon because he's definitely got the lightest track. He says of the three. I was like, no, every night I'm like, yeah, I've definitely got the less moving of boxes.
But on the other hand, you have to kick it all off though by yourself. So
you have to stop. But yes, it's true. He probably designed it. Do you think there is a difference between the American perception of the play and of the significance of the Lehman Brothers and of the fact, it was the fourth biggest firm in the world. They thought it was too big to fail. Do you think there is a difference between that perception and the British perception, which to some extent was affected by what happened, but less bound up in it?
My first experience with being around the show was in New York. And so, which is maybe, and because they built New York.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And members of the family are still
right. It
around.
just had more, there were things that resonated. There were lines that I said to New York, like, these days they call themselves Reform Jews, which is to say they do it their own way. It would get a big laugh from the New York community, in a way that it didn't receive in Sydney, or, there might be a little chuckle or something. But that was New York, you know what I mean? Specifically, I think, to New York City. But what do you...
I don't know. There's a feeling, and I might be totally wrong, and I might get in trouble for saying it, but there's a feeling that it did extremely well here. Obviously, it's a phenomenal play, phenomenal director, phenomenal original cast. It did very, very well. But when it went to New York, it went. What I was hearing, you guys will know more about it. But at the Park Armory, tickets exchanging hands for thousands and thousands of dollars, and it won absolutely every award going. And I think when a bunch of Brits take a play to America, that can go two ways. It can, I think there can be a very negative reaction to that. And there have been definitely other plays about the banking crisis that have gone down less well from a British stable. But this...
Enron. I was about to say, I had friends in New York that were in that, and they were so excited.
But I find that fascinating. I find that what was it about? I mean, be here for ages, but what was it about Enron which became, I don't know, they were American audiences seem to be allergic to that, but adoring this.
So I think that is worth picking at, because I think it is the interesting thing that there is the quality in this play that it is about a family as well as being about a business. And you can take it as a family saga. And what's always struck me is that as a group of actors, you have to get on really well doing it. So how has your bonding worked out as actors doing this play?
Heavy silence.
Yeah, no, very well. I mean, we as John mentioned, we met him I think on May the 7th or May the 6th in London in a studio, and I was thinking, goodness, he's going to be fantastic. He was beating himself up, but we were thinking how great he was going to be.
I was throwing myself against the glass walls.
We're not even there yet.
No, I hesitate because it's like we've worked with multiple people, but I've never had more fun doing the show than I'm doing now. I love doing it. Every time I've done the show, I've loved doing the show with whoever I'm doing it with. Yeah. But this is different. And we literally every night are trying to tease each other on stage. The audience is not aware. This is just for us, like things that so literally when he was moving through the set, I almost said to you, "Ooh, look at Fred Astaire." Like the audience would have known that where we were standing, but I almost said that. I thought it, but I didn't say it. Then it had passed. Then it wouldn't have been funny. So, but I would, I'll probably do it tonight. But it's like, there's just little things about this play demands teamwork.
Yeah.
So everyone has been involved and has been a great teammate. You work together and you help one another, but this is like, I can come to work and be like, oh, I'm so tired. And I'm like, just look at Aaron or watch this guys. Yeah. Well, look at those two. And it's just fun.
It does actually feed all that into the quality of exuberance the play has. Because I always think it's serious. And you're absolutely right. You come in and you think 3 hours, serious subject, black and white designs. And then by the time you leave, there is an exhilaration to it, of that sense of having been on that journey, but also an exuberance of, it is at some levels a tribute to acting itself, isn't it? It's got that sense of being something that's about the actor's art, I guess.
I think so, and about theatre in general, and about, what's that line from Henry V that I'm going to mangle about on your imaginary forces work. That is, I think that the audiences, when it works, they come out elated because they're part of it. They've got to conjure with us the skyscrapers, every single setup is we're there to suggest it, and then they complete the picture. And so when they're as active as engaged as that, as we hope they are as audiences, then it can be, I remember from watching it that's what I found thrilling. And so that hopefully leaves you feeling quite, I don't know, zhuzhy. For want of a better word.
Yeah, well, Sam's line was, it was infinite riches in a little room.
Yes.
And I think that has been the case with the play, and I hope also with this podcast being recorded in a very small room. So thank you all for coming to talk to me, and wishing you much continued fortune with the run, which extends until the 5th of January.
Yep.
At the Gillian Lynn Theatre. So thank you, John. Thank you, Howard. And thank you, Aaron.
Thank you
ever so much. Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the What's on Stage podcast. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be back next week.